is 5 o'clock, so I'm going to open our meeting. Welcome everybody. I advise that everyone is present. We have 2 elected members on line at the moment. I think Councillor Ewan's on her way in to see us. And otherwise everyone else is here in the chamber. So there's no apologies, there's no leave of absences. I'm just going to give our acknowledgement to country, which is that in recognition of the deep history and culture of this place, I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which the City of Hobart was built. I acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Palawa people of Tasmania, and they have survived invasion and dispossession and continue to maintain their identity, culture and rights. The minutes of our last meeting, 10th of May, moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Dutta. Any changes? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. It's carried unanimously. Transfer of agenda items.
Yes, I ask Lord Mayor if item 23 can be heard after the planning items, please.
Item 23. That's about our COVID council.
No, it's the lease of the of part of the Level 4 Council Centre. We have some interested people in the audience.
Oh, okay. So 24 was that? Or 20?
No, 23.
22.
23 according to my agenda.
All right. That's right, 23. Okay, good-o. So that's proposed to be moved. Are there any objections to that? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Communications from the Chair. I don't have any communications tonight. And item 4 is notification of council workshops, and we haven't had a council workshop since our last meeting. Public question time. We do have a public question that Mr Lohberger has put on notice, so I'll ask Mr Lohberger to come forward and ask his question.
Thank you. The much vaunted UTAS master plan for its move into Hobart was released last week. The accompanying urban design framework booklet clearly shows major changes to the footpaths and roadway on Melville Street between Murray and Elizabeth Streets, which is page 64 to 65. The council has responsibility for that section of Melville Street, and the council's Melville Street car park also has its entrance and exit located on that same block. Has UTAS discussed with the council its obvious intentions to change the layout and usage of sections of Melville Street? And does the council have any concerns about UTAS unilaterally proposing changes to the layout and use of Hobart streets without first consulting the council?
Thank you, Mr Lohberger. I have a response here that we'll provide in writing to you as well after the meeting. So I'm advised that there have been discussions with officers concerning the proposal for alterations to Melville Street, but the council has not agreed at this stage to any of the changes proposed, nor have the proposals come before any committee meeting. So before any changes could occur, the council would need to consider an assessment of traffic and amenity consequences, and that all the necessary statutory approvals were in place. Thank you for your question.
Great, thank you.
Lord Mayor, I've got a point of order.
Point of order, yes.
Or a question first. Is Councillor Ewing within this council meeting?
Yes.
I would like to ask the question, Lord Mayor, how on earth is it possible for a councillor or any elected official to be in a car driving whilst being on council? Surely that is against the law. And I find this absolutely absurd that a councillor is driving a car whilst also trying to concentrate on this council meeting. This is appalling, Lord Mayor, and I believe that you should do something about it.
Okay, so I think Alderman Zuko is raising that a meeting procedure, which is the presence of
happy to answer the question, or I'm happy to bow out of the meeting until I'm back home I'm not actually going to be joining you tonight because of COVID guidelines.
Lord Mayor, we've got a councillor who's driving a car, listening to this thing
Alderman
that is
Zuko.
dangerous.
Alderman Zuko, you've made your point of order and I will make a ruling on it. So,
Breaking the law. Absolutely. Appalling.
so the councillor is of the opinion that a meeting procedure is contrary to the Act or the regulations. Now, my understanding is that under the current regulations from the state government, Zoom, the presence of by Zoom is allowed.
Absolutely.
So it's. I don't think that there is a clear case that Councillor Ewan.
Point of order.
Yeah.
Councillor Ewing is driving.
The issue, I think the key issue here is not whether she's on Zoom, that she's using a mobile phone and driving. That is appalling.
Well, it's
the law.
And you've got to say, you should advise
You are
her-
putting people in danger, Lord Mayor.
Excuse me, Alderman Zuko, would you refrain from
will refrain.
accusing me of I will make the decision about this?
I think it is your decision, but
It
it's
is-
clearly in public interest that you ask Councillor Ewan to stop Zooming, using her phone,
Well, okay, thank you.
because she's breaking the law.
Thank you. Thank you for your point of order. Look, I think it's a pretty grey area, to be honest. No, look, it's now my turn to be a point. It's my ruling, and my ruling is final. It is a fairly grey area, but I think I will rule, given Councillor Ewan has expressed a willingness to also leave and rejoin us at home, I will rule that, given the concerns raised about driving, that I will rule that, Councillor Ewan comes back on and they've gone. So there we go. Okay. So petitions. Do we have any petitions? CEO? No. Supplementary items. There is one supplementary item, I think. Is there? No? Okay. Indications of pecuniary conflict of interest is item 8. Do any elected members wish to indicate an item that you've got a conflict with? Councillor Dutta?
Item 23, thank you.
Yeah, items 16 and 23, thanks.
Councillor Sherlock. Okay, so we're now moving on to the City Planning Committee, and Council is now acting as a planning authority. I'll invite the Deputy Lord Mayor to introduce item 9.1.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. 9.1, I'll move that the Council endorse the submission to the Tasmanian Planning Commission in response to Planning Directive 8 as per what is on the agenda.
Councillor Harvey.
Lord Mayor, you'll remember in February this year the government released an interim planning directive, IPD4, which made changes to the Hobart interim planning scheme and to all other interim planning schemes in Tasmania. It did so without any consultation or notice, and those changes have been in effect since the 22nd of February. The government's now taking the next step to formalise those changes by turning the interim planning directive into a planning directive PD8. So move from IPD4 to PD8, but there you go. No relation, I don't think. In order for this to occur, PD8, Planning Directive 8, must be reviewed and approved by the Tasmanian Planning Commission. Now, the Council is asked tonight to endorse the submission prepared by the Council officers. The submission has already been provided to the TPC because there was a very short response time which didn't enable officers to have the submission approved by the Council prior to the due date of the 17th of May. And sometimes we get extensions, but that wasn't to be this time. So the officers have raised 16, I think there's a theme here, 16 issues with PD8, each of which has the potential for unfortunately poor planning outcomes if the TPC does not take our comments on board and amend PD8. So I'll just give you a couple of examples. PD8 replaces the activities which are planning exempt, but there are vague terms which aren't defined, such as actively mobile landforms, which are in the state coastal policy but don't have a clear definition. And also the terms landscaping and vegetation management. So there are some implications which might have dire consequences for for backyards and what can and can't be landscaped or removed. There's also the exemptions allow for activity which should be captured by the Biodiversity Code and Scenic Landscape Codes. PD 8 allows for development which will inevitably have an impact on the amenity of surrounding properties, and particularly of interest brought up at the committee was the removal of rear boundary setback in the general residential zone, which will see more obtrusive developments in that zone. Now that might be, removing setbacks might be suitable in some areas, but doing this in a general residential zone is probably not going to have the best outcome. So what's disappointing is that this is the latest step by the state government to push the statewide provisions through, rather than waiting for that process to unfold as part of the finalisation of the local provision schedules around Tasmania. So some of these big picture planning issues are not really being approached in what could be a better approach that could be taken.
Alderman Briscoe.
Yeah, just a very quick question, Lord Mayor, through you to the, presume, an acting Director of Planning. Yes, how long has the statewide planning scheme been being worked on? Is it 3 years or?
Davey.
Through you, Chair, I would have to check on the dates for that, Alderman Briscoe, but it is many years, and the government has become increasingly keen for that process to be finalised.
And I suppose the council is as well. I share the concerns that have been raised by our officers, though.
Okay, further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 10, fees and charges for city planning.
Thank you. I'll move this, Lord Mayor.
Seconded by Alderman Barakis.
So this schedule of fees and charges relates to city planning, building, environmental health, dog management, among other things. City planning fees are proposed to be increased, and after reviewing the proposed new fees, the committee were satisfied that they were appropriate. In reviewing the fees, officers undertook detailed comparisons between other councils' fees, Launceston and the Greater Hobart councils. And overall, these fee increases allow for a greater cost recovery of the time spent by council officers to provide the services expected by the community. There were gaps in what has been provided as a free service, like pre-planning free service, and sometimes, this review has had a chance to actually identify and put more of a value on officers' time. And also with some of the functions. The imposition of fees for planning must always be balanced to ensure that applicants, potential representors and members of the public feel they can reach out for help to understand the planning process and get initial feedback on proposals. And for this reason, it's proposed that the initial review and confirmation that something is planning exempt remains a free service, and some councils actually charge a fee of about $150 to do so, but it wasn't felt that was appropriate to put in the place. Assistance from the duty planner is also free, although a new fee of $300 is proposed, where detailed feedback is sought from a planner or one of the other expert council officers before a planning application is made. So that's that. Actually putting a value on some of the planners' time. Of interest,
Councillor Ewan's rejoined the meeting.
Of interest, a new fee is also proposed for requests for a meeting with the Urban Design and Advisory Panel before a planning application is made. And that fee is refundable if an application is made on the same or similar basis. It is hoped that this will encourage applicants to take advantage of early feedback from this expert panel. And also there's a new $600 fee for use of our 3D model, which allows developers to acquire part of the model so they can then use it during the design phase. So it should have some beneficial outcomes, but also get some sort of cost recovery for the council. Just of note, there's also an increase in fees for dangerous dogs, which is in line again with other councils, which is a fee of $400 to deal with dangerous dogs. So I move, Lord Mayor.
Further discussion? No discussion? Can I ask a couple of questions? Sorry I wasn't able to attend the meeting. I understand some other councils allow a dog registration sort of multiple years to be purchased. Do we allow that?
I apologise, Lord Mayor, I'm not familiar with that, with the other council's process. As I understand it, we only allow for the single year registration.
Okay. Sorry.
Can I might just add, after our discussion today, Ms Aby, there is a fee for getting your dog registered, there's a cheaper fee for getting your dog registered, which is being introduced. So if you do it early so that you don't have to get notices sent out, then there's a discount fee.
And the second question just relates to, I have heard about a statutory search process that happens when there's a change of property. That relies on a lot of officers' time,
Yes.
And that I think is perhaps not being charged on a cost recovery basis because there's so many elements of the organisation that have to be asked questions.
That fee has been reviewed, and that's a search pursuant to Section 337 of the Local Government Act. Sometimes that throws up extra queries, and the subsequent fees for providing further information has been reviewed as well and is incorporated into the fees so that we have a better way of recovering the costs associated with that information.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Yes,
Sorry,
Alderman
I apologise for getting up after you, Lord Mayor. Just one question, and I'm intrigued. The ceiling final plans for subdivision has gone from 120 to 450. Was that an attempt to recover the actual fees? Because a lot of the others are CPI or just 10%. This one's gone up 300 plus 350%.
Through you, Chair. That particular fee was set after comparisons with other councils. It's still less than other councils' fees have been to date. From memory, Launceston's fee was $485 for the same service. So it was more about bringing our fees into line with other councils.
Then that really invites, I think, a further rejoinder. Are we trying to be like other councils? Our costs would be different, I'm sure, and I just don't understand why that one was picked, whereas there's a whole heap of others. Were they all related to other councils or just this one?
Through you, Chair. A thorough comparison was done between our fee structure and the other councils. It is difficult because councils charge in different ways. For example, some councils charge on a per unit cost of development, and they clearly try and have higher fees for some things and lower fees for others. But we've done our best to realign the fees so that we're comparable with other councils.
Look, I accept what's being said, and I won't go on with it tonight, but I think that's a really dangerous thing, that we're trying to track ourselves to the nearest service station and be the same cost for fuel. I mean, I'll take it out outside of this session with the section. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to sum up at all?
No, thank you.
Lord Mayor? Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 11 is building statistics.
Yes, move the April building statistics, Lord Mayor.
Second by Councillor Sherlock.
And just make the point that in April we had 37 permits issued to the value of $11.3 million, and that included one major project at 32 Romilly Street, which was 9 multiple dwellings at the value of $3.8 million, and that compares to at the same time last year the value of 11.9 or $12 million and 51 permits. So again, we're tracking pretty well comparatively.
Okay. Any discussion? Put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 12, Deputy Lord Mayor.
And this is the planning permits for last month, Lord Mayor.
Seconded by Alderman Barakis.
$31.7 million of 56 permits to the value of $31.7 million. And it's interesting to note that the one major project was probably something that was listed previously at 125 Bathurst Street. It's now, unfortunately, it's now visitor accommodation, hotel industry and food services to the value of $17 million, whereas it was residential development prior to that. So moved, Lord.
Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 13 is...
23.
Oh, sorry, 23. I'm sorry. So we're moving on to item 23, and that would be Councillor Sherlock and Councillor Dutta declaring a conflict of interest, and I will invite Alderman Zuko to introduce this item.
Lord Mayor, I move the item. It's at least part of level 4. This was heavily discussed the other day.
Seconded by Councillor Burnett.
This was heavily discussed the other day at committee. The original request was for a 2-year lease. After much discussion and debate, the committee felt that it was appropriate to give a 6-month lease plus an option. My personal views on it were mainly that we're reviewing just about everything we own, and that's in our council centre there. Yes, I could understand that we've got other leases that are there, but I think we need to sort of look at how and what we do in respect of these spaces. There's still a little bit of information that we still need. I believe the General Manager or the Chief Executive Officer of the General Manager, I'll keep on calling the General Manager, okay? Or the General Manager has to work through. I'm happy to support the 6-month option, and that will give us a lot more insight and gives the General Manager a lot more time to actually work on making sure that everything's all above board. So unless other councillors and elected members have any concerns, hopefully this will get through without as much discussion as we had the other day.
Alderman Thomas.
Sorry, Lord Mayor, I was unable to be at that meeting. Through you, perhaps to either the Director or to the Chair of that committee, is the option exercisable at will by the lessee? In other words, is it an automatic option?
Short.
Lord Mayor, through you, yes, I would regard it as an option exercisable by the lessee.
On that basis, did the lessee originally ask for a longer period? So why on earth are we giving 6 months with an option? Why don't we just give 12 months? Because the lessee can simply say, I'll take the 6 months, please. So let's say 12 months.
Lord Mayor, through you, there was some, for those elected members present, there was some debate at committee. The original officer recommendation was for a 2-year lease.
Yeah, so
elected members, those present, talked about a 6+6 arrangement.
yeah, and I would be fine if both parties had a decision about the 6 months. But if it's just a lessee, then give them 12 to start with, because it's their option. We don't have any power not to give them that second 6 months, unless you change it now to being an option that both parties have to exercise. I'll leave that open to the council to decide.
Alderman Briscoe.
Yes, just a question. The difference between $50 for 6 months or $50 for a year and the commercial rental return, is that going to be recorded as a grant?
Short.
Chairman, through you, yes, consistent with Council's policy, the differential between the nominal rent and the commercial rent is always noted as a grant in Council's annual report.
And there's another, this is an alternate organisation for culturally diverse community, isn't it? So this is a rival organisation? Is it?
Rival to
Lord Mayor, I'm not sure I can answer that question. It is a new organisation in Tasmania.
Okay, so they've approached us, but other newly formed organisations will have the same deal through you, Lord Mayor?
Lord Mayor, through you, that has occurred in the past. There have been newly formed organisations which have approached the council, such as Dressed for Success, that have inquired as to lease space in the council centre building, and the Finance Committee has previously agreed to offer that lease arrangement for that organisation.
Yeah, thank you. I can see the benefit of a community group having a lease at lower rates, but surely when they get on their feet, presumably the membership fees and other grants they may get, then it would come more realistic rather than a donation to a new organisation. Would that be the way you would anticipate, Lord Mayor, that any organisation would go, that you would go to a more realistic rent?
Well, Lord Mayor, ultimately that's a question for the council, but council certainly has an existing policy in place, which is rental arrangements for not-for-profit organisations. Council officers were satisfied that this organisation met the criteria in that policy, and so it's been a long-standing practice of this council that where there is a not-for-profit organisation and the council is satisfied that the criteria in the policy are met, that nominal rent is offered, not a market rent.
Yep, thank you for that. And a final question, and as long as it's following the policy for any organisation, a non-for-profit organisation, do we get access to their balance sheet and profit and loss statements?
Through you, Lord Mayor, no, not usually. It's not a requirement of the lease, as far as I understand it.
Okay, thank you.
Harvey.
Lord Mayor, I was a bit surprised when I saw a request for a 2-year lease, which was agreed to by the staff, suddenly get cut back to a 6-month lease with a 6-month option. Can you inform me, or can the Director of Mr. Short inform us whether or not it was a 1+1, the original lease, the original recommendation?
Short.
Lord Mayor, through you, the officer recommendation was for a 2-year lease.
2-year lease, yep. So I'm not sure why a 2-year lease was rejected in favour of a 6+6 month lease. So I would have been supportive of the original recommendation had I been at the committee or on the committee. So I think I'll move an amendment. I will move an amendment that we go back to the original officer's recommendation. And part 2 of this, the insurance policy. Could someone explain why you need to show all the insurances and you haven't got a lease yet? So shouldn't the insurances come after you've got an agreement with the council, or beforehand as part of the prerequisite to sign a lease?
Mr.
Through you, Lord
Short.
Mayor. Yep.
Lord Mayor, through you, again, there was considerable discussion about this at committee. Standard practice in council's lease documents that there is a requirement for the lessee to have the appropriate insurances at the time of signing the lease. That point was made at committee, but nevertheless, committee members present felt they wanted some assurance around the insurance as part of the decision process.
So I assume that if subsequent to the lease, if there's no insurance policy forthcoming, then the lease would be null and void. Would that be correct?
Short.
Lord Mayor, through you, officers would not recommend that the Chief Executive Officer sign that lease if evidence of appropriate insurance is not supplied.
And that was clear in the officer's report from the committee, to the committee.
Lord Mayor, through you, that was certainly, the point was made during the committee meeting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to move that we go back to the original officer's recommendation, I think, of a 2-year lease, because I think that gives the security and the confidence of tenure for a young organisation to get started rather than a 6-month lease. And if they need to break that 2-year lease, I'm sure there's provisions to be able to break that lease as well if something does go wrong. But I think the assurity of a 2-year lease is much more appropriate than a 6-month plus 6 month. Could I just get a comment from the Director about that, if you think that would be appropriate? Obviously that's what you recommended, I think.
Lord Mayor, sorry, through you, could Councillor Harvey repeat the question?
The appropriateness of a 2-year lease, wouldn't that provide a surety and confidence to this new fledgling group, the Culturally Diverse Alliance Tasmania?
Lord Mayor, through you, yes, as it would any tenant. The longer the lease period offered by the landlord, the more certainty it provides.
Yeah. All right, well, I think I'd like to vote against this one here and go back to the original motion.
So, sorry, Councillor Harvey.
I'd like to second Bill's amendment, thanks.
Sure. So the entire amendment or the
Well,
entire recommend?
If I could be if someone could,
bit.
yeah, the 2-year lease, or I'd even be happy with 1+1 rather than 6 months plus 6 months. But for convenience, I think.
Can you just?
Well, I think we go back to the
your amendment
original
is?
officer's recommendation that they be given a 2-year lease.
In relation to item 1?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And clearly, I think the requirement for insurance policy is covered within that no lease could be signed unless the
Yeah, that's all in item
policies
1.
are,
Yeah.
forthcoming.
I think.
So I'll foreshadow the original officer's recommendation.
In relation to item 1, Councillor Harvey, or do you have an objection to items 2, 3 and 4, which I think may have been added in terms of the grant, that it shows a grant?
Well, could I get clarification? Well,
That'd be the tone anyway.
I thought that's automatic. That, of course, any grant goes onto the register. I just assumed that that's the natural process.
Anyway,
Wasn't in the original.
it was.
It was not. Well, by point of clarification, that part was not, and it's not, nothing is a fait accompli.
Okay, sorry, Mr Jackson's got some clarification too.
Through you, Lord Mayor, parts 2 and 3, as they appear on the council agenda, formed part of the committee recommendation, and part 4 that's on the council agenda was added at committee.
Okay, well, I'll add part 4 as well, if that makes it a bit easier for councillors. Alderman.
I don't know whether I'm adding any clarification, but the CDAT, I'll call them CDAT.
Sorry, Councillor Ewan.
Sorry. The original letter to the council requesting this space said provide a grant for at least 1 to 2 years for the use of the council premises, and then it goes on to say this will add CDAT the capacity to be financially viable and resume payment of rent for the use of the office space. So they've anticipated that they may not need grant after those 1 or 2 years. So it's not an ongoing grant that we would be suggesting tonight. Is that correct? Through you to whoever's going to answer it?
Chairman, Lord Mayor, through you, yes, that is correct. When the lease expires, it comes back to the Finance Committee for renewal, if that is the will of the tenant. And at that time, Lord Mayor, there would be a discussion about the rent payable.
Thank you.
Councillor Ewan, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I did, and thanks for moving that amendment, Bill. I was waving my arm around because I wanted to actually move the same thing, that we go back to the original officer's recommendation, because I think that's what we pay them for, is to be experts in this. I've just got a few comments I'd like to make on it as well. I am really glad to see part 4 of the motion saying that we need to do better to communicate our office availability to groups and people who aren't in the know, because I think that's the same story with a lot of the stuff that we do at council. It's just not communicated well. I am concerned that there's been overzealous monitoring of this item by some elected members because of the involvement of 2 elected members in CDAT. But I'd like to note that both elected members have excused themselves from any part of the discussion or debate around this item. And the organisation has gone through the same rigorous process. And in fact, from my discussions with council staff, it's been even more rigorous than any other group or organisation that we grant office space to. I'm also concerned overall that we as a council and elected members included aren't doing enough to call out poor and discriminatory behaviour when we see it.
Point of order. Point of order.
Yes, Alderman Thomas.
It's critical. It's critical for good governance, Lord Mayor, that when an alderman has any involvement, or a councillor, any involvement in a matter before this chamber, that we are rigorous, and if it's overzealous, then I don't make any apology for it. It's important. There's no question in my mind, although I wasn't at that committee meeting, that any alderman or councillor was trying to make it hard on the applicant, but it is critical that we observe probity and transparency in all our dealings.
Look, I think I will rule, Councillor Ewan, that the comment suggesting that this is based on discrimination might be offensive by a number of elected members, and I'm not sure it's based on any particular evidence. So I'd ask that you withdraw that part of your comment.
Sure, I'll withdraw that. I'm just commenting on what I've seen and experienced, and in my view, I think, if you're applying different rules to different people, then it is in fact discrimination, but I'll leave it at that.
Point of order, Lord Mayor. That was again another attack, and just what the question that someone needs to ask here as well is: was Councillor Ewing at the finance meeting, and was there any discrimination? I assure you, as the chairman, there was not.
Councillor Ewan, that's another request just to withdraw the suggestion that there's been discrimination taking place. If you would, because the members of the committee who were present might find that offensive, and I think.
I find discrimination offensive, but I'll withdraw those comments. I was simply describing what discrimination is because there seems to be maybe a little bit of confusion about that.
Okay.
Anyway, that's fine. That's all I wanted to say. I guess I want to reiterate that it's not, if you want to be an ally to any marginalised group, you got to do some work to get yourself educated and then ask questions as appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate to create additional work for people who already have had to do additional work to get where they are, to work against systems of racism, sexism, and classism that others haven't had to experience. I think it's really important.
Excuse me, Alderman.
Someone pull the plug.
Councillor Sexton,
Thank
Alderman
you.
Sexton wants to speak, I think.
Alderman Sexton.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I voted in favour of this particular change for two reasons. For four reasons, in fact, and I'll list them. Firstly, the original request was for between 1 and 2 years, and in effect we're giving them 1 year, which was, and I think there was some comment in the letter that 1 year would be fine, but 2 years would be better, which is of course correct. Second reason was they're a brand new organisation, and I wanted to support them, hence the 1 year lease. However, they've got no runs on the board at all yet. And as was pointed out by the Lord Mayor at the time, there are a number of organisations in our community that have a lot of runs on the board that would love to occupy that space, effectively for free. So I thought, well, we give them a year, that'll give them plenty of time to prove themselves and to get their runs on the board, and then at the end of that time, they'll be in a strong position to seek an extension. The third reason has already been raised by Alderman Zuko, and that is that we're not sure exactly what we're going to be doing with all of our assets, including our buildings and including space in our buildings. And at this point in time, to lock up more than 1 year, given that we don't really know what we're doing, may end up being more unfair if at the end of, if they're expecting 2 years and at the end of 1 year we have to kick everybody out because we're selling the building or doing something else. I didn't think that was reasonable either, so I'm not sure whether that's 3 or 4 reasons, but that was the basis for. The fourth reason was that because it did involve elected members, we did have to be absolutely scrupulous, and I agree entirely with Alderman Thomas. We do not want to put our colleagues in a situation where they can be accused of being able to influence us inappropriately. And I did not want that, and I had that conversation with Alderman Dutler prior to the meeting. He agreed he did not want to be put into that situation. So, and he wanted every I dotted and every T crossed, and that's what we tried to do. So, I don't believe it was discriminatory, and I believe that 1 year is a good length of time for us to provide this organisation for all those reasons that I've just outlined.
Lord Mayor, I'd like to speak to the
Alderman Zuko.
amendment.
Sure.
Yeah, well, the amendment is, Lord Mayor, as far as I understand, I just want to clarify before I speak, it's for a 2-year, not a 1+1, because Alderman Harvey did say 1+1 and then went 2 years. I just want to have that clarified, please.
Councillor Harvey, I think, was suggesting it goes back to 2 years.
Yes, I wanted to clarify if it was a 1+1 or a 2. Yep.
Okay. And also, Alderman Harvey, in his amendment, was referring to item 4, and also in regards to the council grant. I just want to, and I emphasise this as the chairman in committee, and I'll read it from the report. A recent valuation of the space indicates the value of the area in the council centre is approximately $200 per square metre, excluding GST. Based on the same national lease terms and access to the shared facilities, the value of the proposed lease space of 22 square metres is $4,400 per annum, excluding GST. That is a considerable amount of money that we are granting this organisation, and that is why it is imperative that it goes down as a grant. Now, we're only charging $50 per annum to this organisation, which is fine enough, I've got no problem there, but that must go down as a grant, because at the end of the day, our responsibility is the ratepayers of Hobart and every ratepayer. And again, that was the other component of it that concerned me at committee, which I raised. Are we going to do this all the way down the line with a lot of organisations? And I'm not being disrespectful to any organisation, but it becomes quite a considerable amount of money. My understanding, when we always give grants, it's the other way around. They apply for grants and then we give it to them. But here what we're doing is we're charging them $50 but waiving the rest as a grant. So we're doing it the other way. I'm happy with it. I do have concerns with the 2-year lease. I would have supported a 1+1, but I just have to stick to the original motion that went up to council, unless Councillor Harvey's prepared to move it to a 1+1.
Councillor Harvey, that's a question, I think, to you.
I'm prepared to move it to a 1+1 because I would like Alderman Zuko's support.
Alderman Thomas.
Just on the amendment, 1+1, we keep getting the same issue. If it's a 1-year lease with an option only exercisable by the lessee for a further 1 year, let's call it what it is. That's a 2-year lease, unless you're going to say that either part that the tenant can elect to take up the option, but it is still at the council's volition as to whether they'll grant that extra year. And the reason for that is really important, because like a lot of organisations, voluntary organisations such as this is, they can open with a fanfare the office, but then suddenly for a whole heap of reasons they don't use it. And it's not their fault, but it's just reality speaking. So I really think we should be doing it 1 year with an option, but they exercise the option and the council says yes or no, because exactly as everyone around this chamber has said, there's a number of reasons why we may need the space, or there may be reasons why it should be 1 year.
Okay.
I just want that little
right.
change, that's all.
So
1+1.
I think Deputy Lord Mayor was next.
Thank you. And I'll start with a question through you to Mr. Short. Are all grants listed in the annual report, Mr. Short?
Mr. Short.
Lord Mayor, through you, yes they are, and that is the intent of part 3 of the recommendation.
Thank you. Lord Mayor, I did, as you did, attend the finance meeting, and obviously this has come to us because there are elected members who are involved with the organisation. So we are showing the correct probity by doing this, as no doubt it would if there were a staff member involved with an organisation wanting to lease some of the council offices. So Clearly, that's the reason why we're considering that here tonight. Otherwise, a start-up, a new organisation would be probably just going to use the space without any sort of questioning at this council meeting. And it's clear that the officers have processes in place already in relation to what happens when a start-up, a new organisation wants to lease some space, and we've already heard of other organisations that lease the council offices where we have this space. At the committee meeting, we almost got a deferral of this motion, and I strongly argued against deferral of the motion, because I think a new organisation, and congratulations on to those members in the chamber today who are involved with the motion with the setting up of this new organisation. So deferral was not really on the cards, and it's really important that we consider it, even though they don't have runs on the board. I strongly argued at committee meeting against what Alderman Sexton had said, because it's this is a new organisation. We're not expecting that they're going to have all their processes in place. However, they are a bona fide organisation, and that's what we have before us. So I certainly would feel that the amendment should be supported. It's something that gives a bit more certainty to a new organisation that they have a place. To think that we're doing a review of council-owned offices, and to think that we should put a halt to anybody who might be wanting to use that space, I think is probably folly. I think it would be better to lease the space and use the space where we possibly can, and then consider what we might do further down the track. Lord Mayor, I've been involved, as you know, through various organisations, but in particular I chaired the Migrant Resource Centre, and I know that you're involved with the Multicultural Council of Tasmania. I know that Alderman Zuko is president of the Italian Club, so we have a strong interest around the table in relation to multicultural organisations, and I think that diversity obviously is something that we should be cherishing, no matter what sort of organisation has put their request forward. I'm certainly very pleased to support this, and would certainly support the amendment closer to the original motion.
Alderman Thomas, were you? No, you're right. Alderman Barakas.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, like a few people here tonight, I wasn't present at the committee meeting where this was discussed, so you can only sort of speculate as to the details of those discussions. But and it has also been raised with me that this item did come under a fairly detailed amount of scrutiny, and there's a number of reasons for that. I think there's, as was mentioned by Alderman Sexton, the fact that there were councillors involved in this item, made it incumbent upon council to make sure that all the I's were dotted and all the T's were crossed, to make sure that there was not even the possibility of any perception about anything untoward happening. Not that anyone's suggesting that, of course. And also, the times that we're living in at the moment with council, with the budgetary situation that we're in after COVID, it is upon us to be more careful about how we are expending council resources or council funds, which are ultimately ratepayer resources funds. So I think there's a number of reasons why this application may have come under more scrutiny than others. I don't think it's fair to prescribe discrimination or anything like that to the reason as to why people had certain views or had certain levels of scrutiny onto this. I think that what has been discussed and how things have been happening are completely proper. That said, I think I am happy that Councillor Harvey moved the amendment. I was leaning towards that. I think, as Councillor Harvey said, the intent is, and the suggestion by CEDA, and I'll note John Kamara here in the background, was to give them the opportunity to get themselves established and get themselves self-sustainable, so they are able to pay a more commercial rent into the future. And I'm glad that he also accepted the suggestion for a 1+1. Because I hope that should CEDAD become financially sustainable before the next 12 months, they would acknowledge that and start paying some level of rent, and have that option there that if they do or don't, they can cease the arrangement when appropriate. So look, I'm happy to support it, especially with the 1+1. I was a bit more comfortable with that than just the 2 year. But look, I'm happy to. I think it's a terrific organisation. I think, as unlike what was maybe not suggested or inferred, rather than being a rival organisation, I think much like you have Salvos, you have City Mission, you have a lot of organisations in different spaces. I don't think it needs to be a turf war between one organisation and another. I think they all do terrific work, and they provide a fantastic service to the community. So, look, I think this is one that's worthy of council support, and I think that the motion that we have with the amendment is the correct one.
Hear, hear.
Thank you. Can I just ask a question just around, because it was just something that was raised by the deputy, and I just wasn't sure, just around the process of leases for the council centre and our buildings. Is it just that this one came to us for that reason of the connection with elected members? Because I seem to remember a lease proposal coming to us from a climate change youth organisation that went under some scrutiny, and I'm just trying to remember whether Dressed for Success came to us as well. Like, to what extent do leases come to us? Can that be clarified? Like, these kind of leases come to us?
Lord Mayor, generally speaking, the Finance Committee has delegation to resolve on leases of council property. There are times when they then come through to the council meeting, and this is one of those times. In terms of when a property becomes available or is available, it has depended on the nature of the property. So generally, leases within the council centre space have generally come on the basis that there's been a direct inquiry to the council, is there any space available? Officers then usually work with the proponent to determine whether the council centre is indeed an option, because it certainly won't suit every possible tenable event.
Okay. And so just to clarify, so item 4 will hopefully make that process a bit clearer for everyone about how if you do have a interest in the centre, you can come forward. Yes, that's right, Lord Mayor. Okay, great, thank you. All right, so I'll put the amendment by Alderman Harvey, or Councillor Harvey, sorry.
Can I just have clarification now? Alderman Thomas suggested, which I thought was that it was a 1+1, but with a condition that both parties agree. Was that accepted in?
Lord Mayor, may I assist?
Yes,
Lord Mayor, I was going to actually bring that up in my summing up, and I believe that should be drawn up by our legal team. And our legal team have listened to debate, and no doubt they would put the appropriate conditions on the lease that is legally possible. Yeah, that's the way to do it.
I just wanted Alderman, through you, Alderman Harvey, to say, yes, Councillor Harvey, that's what you intended, that it's a 1+1, but with both parties agreeing?
1+1, and, as Alderman Zuko said, whatever the standard lease is. I'm not going to decide whether or not what the conditions are for whether we agree or they agree to continue the second one.
I've asked, because Alderman Thomas had to leave by the look of it, I just wanted to clarify where you stood, and perhaps we should ask the questions of the officers where they stand.
It will be a standard 1+1. I don't think we can have a different lease for this organisation if there's something else.
Can I have a clarification there? Because I don't know what I'm voting for now.
Well, it says that the CEO will finalise the terms of the lease, but maybe if Mr Short can answer whether there's this kind of options with other leases.
Lord Mayor, listening to the debate tonight, I think it would be wise to make the option exercisable by both parties.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. All right, so we'll put the amendment, which is changing item 1 to, rather than 6+6, it's 1+1. and otherwise the motion stays the same. That's moved by Councillor Harvey. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. That's carried unanimously. Now I'll put the substantive... You'd like to say
Look, I'd just like to say a few words, Lord Mayor. This was heavily debated at committee, and there was a number of changes made at committee. It just goes to show that a little bit more further debate, some discussion in respect of making sure that we do the right thing by the organisation, but also do the right thing by the council. And it just goes to show that through the debate by Alderman Harvey, he convinced me that I'm quite happy to be flexible in the sense, and I'm quite happy with what was proposed. But I will reiterate basically what Mr. Short just said, because at the end of the day, the least conditions can be drawn up to suit any party, one party or the other party. I believe that our council officers have listened to debate, and no doubt they would always, firstly, protect the best interests of the city council and its ratepayers. So I will support the substantive motion. It was quite an interesting debate, and it just goes to show that how we can debate and massage something so we all are in agreement.
Okay, I'll put the substantive motion. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. We'll just call in Councillors Dutta and Sherlock, and then we'll move on to item 13. And Councillor Harvey, it'll be your show, please.
I don't know if I need to make a show. Probably just move it, I think. 13. Fees for city infrastructure.
Not the eject button. Not the eject button.
I think we've lost Councillor.
Yeah, so Alderman Thomas and Alderman Sexton have left the meeting.
Okay, thanks, Lord Mayor. City Infrastructure Committee, item 13, I'll recommend the recommendation that we adopt the fees as per the schedule.
Seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 14 is fees and charges.
This is the 21-22 fees and charges, City Planning Division, Residential Parking Permit and Traffic Strategy and Projects. I'll move the item.
Seconded by Councillor Dutta. Any discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 15 is Culture, Community and Events Committee. Councillor Sherlock.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'll just move the item, thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Harvey. Any discussion about the fees and charges? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. That's carried unanimously. Item 16 is Dark Mofo further in-kind support. Councillor Sherlock.
Oh, sorry, I'm just declaring, I declared an interest for last.
Okay. And Alderman Sexton is not available anymore either. Deputy Lord Mayor, would you like to move this? You were.
Yes, Lord Mayor, I'll move that this in-kind support for Dark Mofo occur.
Seconded by Councillor Harvey.
So, Lord Mayor, we did we had a brief special meeting in relation to this, and it had been discussed earlier that we would do some partial funding. So this is a small amount of council approved the in-kind funding requests for City of Hobart venues such as the Regatta Ground, Salamanca Lawns, Long Beach and City Hall, valued at $6,700. And that council approved a partial fee waiver for the road closures required, valued at $900. So fairly small amounts. And of course, this would be recorded in the grants, assistance and benefits provided section of the annual report, Lord Mayor.
Okay. Any discussion? put that. All those in favour say
Oh,
aye.
Lord Mayor, just put in the motion. I'd like to speak to it.
I said any discussion.
Oh, sorry, Lord Mayor, you were very quick on that. Lord Mayor, there is discussion. Firstly, I'd like, I support Dark Mofo in-kind assistance. It's an amazing event. Lord Mayor, I'd like to present another motion, 16A, and I'll just present it to you, Lord Mayor.
Is this an amendment?
No, Lord Mayor, this is a motion, Lord Mayor, that I'd like to move. As in accordance to meeting procedures, Lord Mayor.
Well, yes, but I would like to discuss the motion in front of us, so unless this is an amendment.
No, it's not an amendment, Lord Mayor. The only reason why I'm bringing it up, this 16 is community culture and events, and we're discussing an event item, and I'm adding another motion to the event item under 16, under the meeting procedures, Lord Mayor.
I would prefer if you would make it as an amendment.
Point of order.
Alderman Zuko. Yeah, yes.
It's the motion. I don't have it.
I haven't been able to put it yet.
Okay. Look, what I'm proposing, the meeting procedures in this space are pretty contradictory, to be frank. But I can, as the chair, request that the motion be circulated in writing. And I would request that that's actually circulated to all people who have to make a decision. So I would ask that the motion be circulated in writing and we consider it after we consider this item. So if that can be arranged, and we'll continue on with the Dark Mofo item 16 for now. But I will accept your motion from the floor, Alderman Zuko. But I just want to mention to elected members a couple of things that before we just go on, just because it's important that we do understand meeting procedures and what we're doing here, because it's quite, it's not a usual process. So under Section 8 of the meeting procedures under the Local Government Act, Section 8, Section 8.5, a matter may only be discussed at a meeting if it is specifically listed on the agenda of that meeting. And so that is, the council can decide by absolute majority to decide to deal with a matter that is not in the agenda if the General Manager has reported that it was not possible to include the matter on the agenda, that the General Manager has reported that the matter is urgent and the matter includes the need for qualified advice and the advice has been obtained and taken into account. So we can, under 8.5 and 6, we can, normally it should be that unless an item is specifically listed on the agenda, we would not actually discuss it. We can decide by absolute majority to discuss it. But then later in the meeting procedures, in item 16, which is around motions, it does say under 16.1 that if during a meeting a councillor intends to move a motion of which notice has not been given, the chairperson of the meeting may require the councillor to provide a written copy of the motion, which is what I'm doing right now. It is quite silent on whether it's silent on Section 8, which I've just read out to you. So in some ways, it is a bit contradictory. But what I'm proposing is that we accept the motion so long as that it's circulated to all of you, but that we vote under Section 8 about whether we're happy to discuss that motion. Because that then allows for both elements. Sorry, I think Councillor Dutta was up first. Yes, Councillor Dutta?
Is it possible also to give us Section 8, 5 and 6 and Section 16 so I can read and interpret the way I think instead of just being read to? Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know, that's a bit... We'd need 5 minutes. So we'll deal with this matter separately. We'll deal with item 16 and we'll get these documents so that people can make the decision and also get the motion that's being circulated by Alderman Zuko. Okay, Councillor Coates was next, thanks.
Okay, sorry.
Look, just listening to your things, it's perhaps a question through you, because I'm not sure of the process here, but keeping in mind, you just said you're happy to accept, but for providing writing, would it be possible, I know the item's closed, for transfer of addendums, to transfer section 16 to be heard after section 28, to allow that time?
No, I don't think it's necessary, because I think this is a separate matter that we can decide on. We can accept motions, or we can make a decision whether we will accept the motion. That's allowed for in the meeting procedures, so we'll make that decision separately. So while those copies of those documents are being provided, I'll ask that we move back to the item 16, please.
Well, before you do, I do seek point of clarification. Item 2 under the meeting procedure, under 16.2 of the meeting procedure, Lord Mayor, this is where I have to challenge you. It says here very clearly, the chairperson of the meeting is not to allow a motion to be debated or otherwise dealt with unless it has been moved or seconded by one councillor and seconded by another councillor. Lord Mayor, that is the contradictory point in respect of the meeting procedure. It's not up to the council to determine whether or not the motion is accepted. It's actually quite clear there that it says the chairperson is not to allow the motion to be debated or otherwise dealt with unless it has been moved. So if it's moved and seconded, it is actually legal and it overrides the Act. So it doesn't need absolute majority of council.
Look,
I've sought legal advice, Lord Mayor, but it's okay. Well, if it doesn't go the way that meeting procedures do, we'll have to just deal with it legally.
Okay. I think to be on the practical level, let's deal with item 16, which is a very important matter for the council, and then we can debate this other motion. Okay. So who is going to speak to the dark mofo in Consport? Does anyone? Oh, we just.
Well, I have. Yeah.
Yes. All right. So we'll put that item 16. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. That's carried unanimously. Now.
Councillor Sherlock back.
We'll get Councillor Sherlock back. So we might just move on to the next one until we've got the meeting procedure documents as well. Is that okay? All right. All right, so Economic Development and Communications Committee, item 17. Who'd like to move this? Alderman Thomas is away.
I'll move it, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, fees and charges, community life, just a schedule of fees. Also move.
So we've got a seconder for that. Second by Councillor Harvey. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. It's carried unanimously. Item 18, Finance and Governance.
Yes, Lord Mayor, this is a financial report as of the 31st of March, which actually our bottom line is getting better than what we anticipated, Lord Mayor, and also it's brought to our attention that there's a potential that we may be getting some of the grant money that we've also sought, which could be up to $5 million. So hopefully things are getting on the better side of the red line. So, Lord Mayor, if we continue this work, we will slowly get out of the financial situation we're in, and I'm just hoping that it continues on and we don't have to keep on borrowing, and we don't have to borrow the funds that we're looking at.
Lord Mayor, just a brief comment. We have a workshop tomorrow, so I imagine that these issues will be discussed as well, because obviously if we get all the fees and charges through tonight, then we'll have a better idea of our revenue. So, so is that correct? Yeah, I think the CEO is not. Thank you.
Oh, for this one, we need a seconder for this. Councillor Coates. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Say no. Carried unanimously. Item 19, fees and charges financial services.
Yes, Lord Mayor, the fees and charges, these are a schedule of fees and charges in the open committee. Lord Mayor, I just so move.
Seconded by, need a seconder for that, Councillor Dutta. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 20.
Yes, further fees and charges and long-term parking fees. Lord Mayor, there's a schedule here of new fees and charges for the upcoming period, which includes parking enforcement, off-street parking, long-term off-street parking, short-term off-street parking, short-term motorbikes, meters, vouchers, and smart sustainable city. And also, Lord Mayor, there's going to be a reduction of 90-minute free off-street parking services to 60 minutes, commencing on July 1st, 2021. So there'll be a slight change in the free parking in our car parks.
I'll put that. Have we got a seconder for that one? Councillor Harvey. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 21 is Parks and Recreation Committee, I think.
Yes, no, it's City.
No. That's Alderman Briscoe.
No. Aren't we up to
21,
which is City Government?
Sorry,
okay,
my
Lord Mayor,
agenda's not good.
No problem.
21.
You want me to go?
Yes, go for it, please.
Okay, no. There's more fees and scheduled fees and charges and city governance marked on the agenda. Okay, it's venue fees, customer service and risk management. So move.
That's seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. So, Alderman Zuko.
Yes, Lord Mayor. Hobart City Mission short-term licence extension. Safe space. Lord Mayor, this had quite an extensive discussion and scrutiny in respect of the extension, and the committee felt that the extension was appropriate, but also to ensure that should there be any issues with planning and building permits, that that is also considered. In particular, if there's a third-party appeal lodged in respect of that, I think it's only appropriate. But at the end of the day, they're endeavouring to go through the proper channels to get planning and building approval for the new space. But the only obstacle there would be a third-party appeal. I recommend this motion to council.
Any discussion, Deputy Lord Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I felt that this was an important extension to provide. It really just gives some leeway for the Hobart City Mission to resolve some of the planning issues and to consolidate the safe day space with the safe night space. Interestingly, I did have a discussion with the CEO of City Mission, who didn't necessarily think that it was such a good idea to have the day, night, and the day space and the night space actually on the same premises. But certainly, if we can extend it for a short period and then get back to the core business of the City Hall and that space for the youth arc, then we'll be looking after the group of people who we need to be looking after, and we should be helping resolve. I think we've gone out of our way to help resolve some of this short-term accommodation issue.
Okay, further discussion? Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I wasn't in this committee either when the decision was made, and I'm just going off the discussion that we had last time when this came up. It was noted in the committee report, I think just briefly that they had found somewhere, and this was just an extension to get them the opportunity to get that all organised. So that just to confirm, this isn't going to be another one of those extensions into perpetuity. There is actually an end. There's a light at the end of the tunnel here. I just wanted to confirm that.
Mr. Short.
Lord Mayor, through you, yes, we understand the Hobart City Mission is in the process of finalising an alternative venue, and the purpose of this extension was just to make sure they had enough time to finalise those negotiations on a specific venue.
In that case, Lord Mayor, I'm happy to go with the recommendations. It's been moved.
Alderman Briscoe.
It's more a bit of amusement, but I did ask the question last time we discussed this, that would this item ever come before us again? And the clear answer from the General Manager at the time and Mr Short was no. So, but look, I can understand if they're so close, then it would be mean for us not to give the extension.
Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. We've dealt with the next item already, so we'll go to item 19. Alderman Zucker. Oh, sorry. The next item is the new policy Chief Executive Officer.
Yes, Lord Mayor, I'd just like to move that we're going to give our new Chief Executive Officer, General Manager, some powers. So I so move.
Seconded by Councillor Sherlock. Any discussion?
So essentially all it is under the Act it talks about the General Manager, and now because we've got a CEO, it has the same powers as the General Manager under the Act. Just a question, how many other councils have the title CEO rather than General Manager in Tasmania?
I don't think there's any in Tasmania. Launceston, sorry.
So I'm wondering whether a quiet whisper to someone in government that we should have the option in the appropriate act rather than doing this sort of funny way around that we give the same powers as a General Manager. So I don't think it needs an amendment, but I think it's something that probably other councils might pick up as well. It should be CEO rather than General Manager. And Alderman Zucco and I have lived through the Town Clerk, General Manager, CEO. Will we live through another iteration? We don't know. And that's council.
But you're still called Alderman.
No,
Okay.
quality always goes on.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 20 is annual plan progress report.
25.
Oh, sorry. The next item is...
I think someone's numbered yours completely wrong, Lord Mayor. Yes, Lord Mayor. I'll just move the item that we endorse the annual plan progress report.
And seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Now, I think we'll just quickly get these other items done from the Parks and Recreation Committee. Alderman Briscoe.
Look, I intend just to move item 26 and 27 as a bundle, and note that the longevity of Alderman Zucco and I, once we used to have all the fees and charges as one item, and it was a much easier way to do it because there doesn't seem to have been great debate about any of them because they've all gone through a committee. But I move the items 26 and 27 together.
Seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 23 is the review of COVID meeting format. Deputy Lord Mayor, would you
Move
like to
item 28 that we go back to a standard layout, Lord Mayor, where possible and that it's safe.
Seconded by Alderman Briscoe.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, I think everyone knows I've been pushing this, and I was one of them that sort of mentioned this as well. I just came back from Melbourne this morning at 6 a.m, Lord Mayor.
What suburb?
Sorry?
Sorry, what suburb? We've just...
Well, I wasn't in any of the suburbs that were dangerous, I assure you. But I went to Marvel Stadium, Lord Mayor. Oh no, actually, let's go back a step, because this is how this whole COVID thing is starting to do my head in. I go to the airport, I put a mask on. I am not allowed to sit next to two people because they've covered the seats. Then I can sit down in two more seats. 3 minutes later, I'm on a plane sitting next to three people. there is. Then I go to Marvel Stadium, Lord Mayor, where there's 34,000 people at the footy. Not only that, then there's these 34,000 people all walking from Marvel Stadium to the train station. Then I looked down at 2 platforms at the train station, and there were sardines. Now I know, you know, we're all trying to ensure that we have this social distancing, but it really is doing my head in. We advocate X, we're doing Y, but then in this meeting chamber, we're so stretched, it's unbelievable. I think what we're doing is the right thing, but maybe we've, you know, like I'm fully supporting the way our health experts are dealing with this, but somewhere along the line, there's this massive imbalance about advocating social distancing, but not actually delivering it right across the spectrum.
Okay, I'll put the recommendation, and that's been changed to that we do go back to the to the traditional room configuration. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Okay, now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to adjourn the meeting very, very briefly, like about 3 minutes, because I would like everyone just to be clear on the things that you've got and that I'm asking you to read. So we've got the motion from Alderman Zuko that's been circulated. You've all got a copy of that. I wanted to just draw your attention to item 8.5 and 8.6 of the meeting regulations, and please have a look at that and consider that, because that does propose that we should, because this wasn't on the agenda, we should decide by absolute majority to deal with the matter.
Although 16 has a different view of that.
That's exactly right.
Well, some people might say that 16 relates to motions that are related to an item on the agenda. So that's
Silent.
In the adjournment, you could seek legal advice from our number of lawyers on the staff.
Yeah, I think they all recognise that we can do that. Yeah. And then the other item that I'd like you to consider is item 16 around motions generally, and in particular item 16.1 and 16.9, I guess. There's also the matter which is, because this is would be dealing with overturning a motion, a decision of council, but we can get to that at a later stage.
Point of clarification, Lord Mayor, I'm not asking to overturn. I think you've got to read my motion very carefully. I'm not asking for that.
Okay, we'll get to that down the track if we're going to discuss the motion. Okay, so I'm just going to adjourn for the purposes of elected members just reading the material, because this is, and just for 3 minutes. Up if we could, Alderman Brockus, would you mind? Oh, Mr. Doyle's doing it.
Sorry.
Well, there you go, eh?
Like the good old days, Jeff, isn't it?
No, not quite. Yeah.
I know. Remember when you couldn't put up the same motion within 2 years? Back in the 90s, remember that?
Yes.
Remember how I used to change the motion, twist the thing, and I had the motion each month? You forget that, don't you?
I remember we had a time when those motions had to go through the committee, and then it was realised it was not legal.
Yeah, but I remember the days when you couldn't put up another motion for 2 years, the same one. All you have to do is change 3 words and that's it. Anyway, see what happens here.
Okay, I am just going to wait for Mr. Jackson to come back because there was a request for us to get the advice of a lawyer on these meeting procedures before we discuss them.
I bet he's going through his first year law textbook straight away on meeting procedure. There's a bit of common law involved too.
Legal advice, one set of legal advice is going to be completely different to the other set of legal advice.
What's the equivalent for lawyers with Dr. Google? You know?
I don't do Dr. Google.
Oh, it's come back very quickly. So
I assure you, I don't do Dr. Google. I can show you my personal legal bills.
Okay, thanks everyone for coming back, and we're reconvening our meeting, and we're here to discuss a motion that wasn't on the agenda. I am going to ask Mr. Jackson, who's our in-house lawyer and head of governance, to provide some advice for the council before we make a decision on particularly 8.6.
Through you, Lord Mayor, I think our advice is that the way you've proposed to deal with the matter is the correct way to do that, which is in accordance with Regulation 8.6, putting it to the council to first determine whether to deal with the matter or not.
Can I ask a question through that? So what's the relevance of 16? If during the meeting, a councillor intends to move a motion of which the notice has not been given, the chairperson of the meeting may require the councillor to provide a written copy of the motion, which is done. The chairman of the meeting, the chairman of a meeting, which is the Lord Mayor here, has allowed that motion to be put. So surely to be put and seconded, and then it will continue. It's gone past the agenda item now because the motion has been accepted by the Lord Mayor earlier. So we're on to section 16.
Through you, Lord Mayor, I'm not clear. I'm not sure that the motion has been accepted.
I know, because clearly, if we look back at the tape, yeah, the Lord Mayor definitely said, "I will accept the motion."
And we'll deal with it later.
I'll deal with it later. I will accept the motion as a word. We could go back and look at the tape to get the exact words. Yeah.
But I think the council has to decide by absolute majority whether to actually deal with the matter. It's not on the agenda.
It does. The question for the legal person is, does section 8 override section 16? Because I remember many times in this council where we discuss an item and then the alderman suggests a motion, and that's accepted by the Lord Mayor, and we continue. There's been no notice of motion given. There's been no absolute majority. So it is a very common procedure, even in this council, in recent months, in recent meetings, that another motion's been accepted.
Yeah, through you, Lord Mayor. Obviously, not wanting to be drawn into the debate. I guess our advice is clear that the way it's been proposed to be dealt with is correct. I certainly concede there is some ambiguity, I guess, between...
Well, there's no ambiguity where the Lord Mayor's already accepted the motion, so it's got to be...
Sorry, I think that's a debating point, Alderman Briscoe, not... The officer's giving you his advice and...
Lord Mayor, if it is a debating point, we're talking about the law. We've accepted motions, you've accepted motions in the middle of a council meeting that's not been on the agenda, and it's a common procedure, which in fact we're following 16. It's been a common procedure. Now, because of the interest of the motion, I think it was wise of you to accept it. Wise of you to accept it, because tomorrow's headlines presumably is Lord Mayor refuses to accept a motion.
Point of order. Point of order.
No, I'm talking about a point of order.
Yes.
Sorry, I thought you were just discussing.
Well, I'm seeking information.
I think you're now getting into debate.
Well, I will sit down, but
okay.
But
I'm going to take the advice of our of Mr. Jackson that we should make a decision under 8.6 about whether we would like to deal with this matter, because I think my understanding is that other motions have come up in relation to an agenda item. So they're motions that sort of feed off a particular relevant agenda item, whereas this is quite a separate item with its own rationale, its own motion. So I feel rather than it being on me, it really is up to the council to make a decision under 8.6 whether you would like to deal with this matter that is not on the agenda. So that is what I'm going to put now.
Lord Mayor, we have a debate. Lord Mayor, I'm having a debate on what you're proposing. My debate's this, Lord Mayor. You need to read item 6 very, very carefully, and I think this is where I don't believe this has been read correctly. Item 8 is about the agenda, and a council by absolute majority at an ordinary council meeting or council committee by simple majority at the council meeting may decide to deal with a matter. I'm not seeking to deal with the matter. When you go over to motions, Lord Mayor, it's talking about if during a meeting a councillor intends to move a motion, in which I'm moving a motion. Right? That's what I'm doing. I'm not asking the council to deal with the matter. I'm asking the council to deal with the motion as it states in section 16, and I'll read it again. If during a meeting a councillor intends to move a motion of which notice has not been given, in other words, it was not on the agenda, I have not given notice. There is nothing here to say that. It might have been there, but I've actually adapted the motion in accordance with section 16. Given the chairperson may require council to provide a written copy of the motion, which I did, Lord Mayor, you accepted it. The chairperson is not to allow a motion to be debated or otherwise dealt with. We're talking about a motion, not a matter, unless it's been moved by a councillor, seconded by another. Now again, Lord Mayor, under meeting procedures, you don't even have to accept a seconder. So I'm sorry, I will argue against what our advice is, and I will put this council on notice that maybe we should seriously consider how we're dealing with this tonight.
Further discussion?
Lord Mayor, I move a procedural motion of part 20 of the meeting procedures, 21A, that the motion which you have moved, which is that we vote on this, now be put.
Who's moved that motion? No one's moved it.
No one's moved it.
There's been no procedural motion.
Point of order, Lord Mayor. There's been no motion put. There's been no motion seconded. All you've done is accepted it. I haven't even put it yet.
No, it's the absolute.
Okay, so, and yes, Councillor Sherlock.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'm also reading what Alderman Zuko has said about 8, the agenda, at point number 6, but I think he stopped reading at a very crucial point, and that was the word matter. He subsequently didn't read anything after that, which is very crucial to this as well, which was a matter that is not on the agenda. This particular matter was not on the agenda. So now if we go to 16, which is what she's referring to, 16.1, if you're in a meeting, a councillor intends to move a motion, that's what he's doing. He's moving a motion. Yes, of course, that's a specific with regards to a motion that's not on the agenda. But if you go back to 8, this is not actually on the agenda. So in fact, I would say 8 actually supersedes it. Reason being, what was actually failed to be read after what Alderman Zuko said, it's may decide to deal with a matter that is not on the agenda. This was not
Point of clarification, Lord Mayor.
Sorry, Alderman.
Point of clarification, Lord Mayor. I need to clarify. I will.
But in terms of, excuse me, Alderman Zuko, in terms of putting the motion, someone is going to have to. I can't read that from the floor. So, Deputy Lord Mayor has put the motion. Which motion are you talking about? That we make a procedural motion on. We make a decision.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that the motion?
That's the motion. Yes, procedural motion now.
The procedural motion.
So we're going to be. What's the
I'm
word?
seeking a point of clarification.
Yes, you can seek a point of
Okay, point of clarification. I've just been accused of not reading past the word matter, but I believe that you need to also, in 6, read A and B and C, not just matter. When you read A, B and C, it clarifies.
That the Deputy Lord Mayor is putting, that we make a decision about whether we accept this motion. I need a seconder for the Deputy Lord Mayor's procedural motion.
So we don't accept the matter of the motion that's being put by Alderman Zuko. Is that
We are making a determination about whether we
So we're not allowed to debate that. So it's like what do you call it?
It's a procedural matter. We're shutting debate down.
Shutting debate down. So we're not allowed to debate whether we actually. But how can we decide whether we accept Alderman Zuko's motion or not if we don't have debate? Because you stopped me going into debate when I.
Procedural motion that we make the vote on whether we want to consider this matter.
But we can't debate it then.
Well, we can if the group decides that they want to debate the matter. Okay, so let's
vote against the procedural motion.
We're putting a procedural motion that the council decide whether it would like to deal with this matter that is not on the agenda. Okay, it's the council's decision. It's a procedural motion. I'll put that. All those.
Wait, sorry. It's in the positive or the negative. The council decide not to deal with this.
No, the council. What's your motion?
The motion be now put. So
what motion?
Point of order, Lord Mayor. What's the motion?
What's the motion?
The motion is to consider the matter.
Consider what matter?
The motion.
Which motion? Could I have that in writing? What motion are we considering?
That's right.
What motion are we considering?
It's okay, it's on tape to project.
But we haven't got it in writing.
Okay.
It's this one right here.
Yeah, it's this one. It's the one.
I haven't put it yet.
You haven't put it.
No.
Excuse me, can I just seek clarification that...
Second.
No.
That's exactly right,
no.
Excuse me, everybody, this is ridiculous. We have to follow some basic procedures here. Now, my understanding is that we are putting... The Deputy Lord Mayor is putting a procedural motion to put the matter...
What matter?
That the council decides whether it will accept.
By absolute majority, yes.
So if you vote in favour of the Deputy's motion, you are saying that you do want to consider this matter. If you vote against the Deputy's... This is what my understanding, Alderman Briscoe.
But what's the matter?
We know exactly what it is.
We don't know what the matter is, because unless it's specified...
Lord Mayor, I haven't even put the motion yet.
No, I'm sorry, that is because it is not on the agenda and we are deciding whether we are happy to, under item 8.6, consider this matter that is not on the agenda, which is what...
But we've got to specify the matter, otherwise we're saying, what's the matter? So it's got to be that we're not to consider Alderman Zuko's proposed motion about the taste. That's what we've got to have in the motion. Otherwise, the matter. What's the
item
matter?
that is not on the agenda.
Which item that's not on the agenda? You've got to actually have a clear statement of what the item is, and if the deputy puts it, then it will be clearer.
Okay.
Put the item, which is the proposed motion by Alderman Zuko, is the matter.
Okay.
So the item is that, and we need an absolute majority, as I understand this, Lord Mayor, that we do not hear the motion.
What motion?
Okay. Sorry.
Alderman Zuko's.
No.
Hear Alderman Zuko's motion.
Oh, right, okay, that's fine. They don't want to hear the motion.
Right.
So we're not allowed to debate that now.
So this is the procedural motion that we put this motion now. I'm going to ask Mr. Jackson to read it out for everyone so they're very clear.
I just need some clarification, Lord Mayor, that's all.
No, just let's hear it first. Mr. Jackson.
Through you, Lord Mayor, my understanding is that the motion to be voted upon is that the proposed motion of Alderman Zuko regarding the taste not be considered by the council.
The proposed motion. I haven't put the motion.
The motion before us, you have it in writing.
Point of clarification, Lord Mayor, I just need this clarified. So, you're voting on a motion that I haven't put yet. I haven't put it yet.
It's a procedural motion and I'm going to put it now.
Could I, point of order, what's the regulation to do with procedural motions?
That we take them now and I make the decision.
No, but what are the procedural motions what are the list of procedural motions? Because I don't think this fits in with the list of procedural motions.
It does, that the motion
I haven't moved my motion
that the motion be...
I haven't had the opportunity.
But what's the motion being put?
The motion that we not accept...
You're not dealing with my motion because I haven't put it.
That we not accept them. That we not
So
accept...
we have no debate on any motion, and we can't see the reasons why we should debate Alderman Zuko's Taste of Tasmania motion. We're stopping the debate. Literally stopping the debate.
It's a procedural motion as to whether the council will decide whether it wants to discuss it. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Wait, if we say aye, are we voting to not accept it or to accept it? Because it said...
Everyone's confused.
I'm confused. I don't know what I'm
I
voting
think
on.
we should have another adjournment to get the motions correct.
I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm voting on.
Excuse me,
Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko, if you would just let other people speak, Mr. Jackson.
Confusing it.
No one actually said aye or nay, did they?
I've got no idea.
I don't know what they're voting for. So we have to have another adjournment.
Okay.
Through you, Lord Mayor, the motion to be put to the meeting is that the proposed motion from Alderman Zuko regarding the Taste of Tasmania not be considered by the council.
Okay. So that is a procedural motion through you, Lord Mayor, a procedural motion?
It's a procedural
So we can't have
motion.
debate on that motion?
It's a procedural motion, as
No,
I
could I just ask
understand.
through you to the legal officer, and he's interjecting, and you haven't stopped him. Lord Mayor, could I have, is that a normal procedural motion? A motion we haven't considered.
I haven't moved
a motion. So the simple way would be Alderman Zuko moves the motion, someone seconds it, and then you have a procedural motion to stop it being considered.
I understand it now. I understand it, Jeff.
Okay.
We're not allowed to accept the paper it's written on because I haven't moved it yet. Okay.
It's incredible.
Whether we consider the matter that isn't on the agenda, this is a matter that isn't on the agenda, it's a procedural
It's not a matter,
motion.
Lord Mayor. I've moved the
Okay,
motion in accordance with section...
I'm going to... Councillor Dutta, very quickly.
Lord Mayor, is it possible to just have a break for 2 minutes? You know, I think there is a confusion. No. For me, there is a confusion.
Yeah, I asked you a moment ago.
Excuse me, please stop interjecting. Councillor Dutta, can you explain why you're not clear?
The confusion for me is this, that here, if I can just go back a bit, when this was put, I requested that a written motion be given, right? And so a written motion was given. So my understanding is factually and chronologically that when Alderman Zuko put this motion, I wasn't aware of it. And then you said, okay, you will give it to us in writing. So that's been given to us. The second point for me, the confusion is this, as far as I understand, that the motion hasn't been moved nor seconded. So I'm having difficulty now to say now, what is the procedural motion?
That's exactly what I said a moment ago.
Yes!
My understanding is the
Thank
procedural
you.
motion is that the council, under 8.6, decide
That's not a
not to
procedural motion.
deal with
That's a
the
motion.
matter.
It's not a procedural motion.
Can I just clarify something? Just to clarify a bit of the confusion, now that we've understood that a procedural motion supersedes everything, and I've only been on this council for 2 years, and I understand that when a procedural motion is put, we have to vote. We have to vote. Now, let me tell you what the procedural motion is. Under 21A, as the Deputy Lord Mayor pointed out, she wanted the procedural motion to be that we don't actually accept this particular piece of paper that outlines a particular motion to be put.
So you're not
She doesn't want
accepting
it to be accepted. That's the procedural motion. That's what we're supposed to be voting on. No, how is that not clear? I don't understand. I know, absolutely. So that's why I'm clarifying it for you. The procedural motion sits for everybody then.
Okay.
The procedural, even over my 2 years of being here, 21A procedural motion.
So the advice is that we can proceed with a procedural motion which is informed by by the meeting regulations 8.6, which is that we have to decide by an absolute majority whether we can consider an item that's not on the agenda. So, and that motion has now been put.
Lord Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt you. The clear question through you to the legal officer, was this a procedural motion? It's not a procedural motion. It's a close down a debate motion. It is not a procedural motion because there's no motion before us.
No motion before us.
So a motion. So I wonder if I could have a clear advice from our legal. I'm sorry about putting our legal officer under pressure, but this is a very unusual situation, and I don't believe it's a procedural motion. It's a motion to close down debate on Alderman Zuko's motion, which, as Councillor Dutt has pointed out, has been accepted and in writing.
You're seeking clarification.
Yes, I am.
It's a question, not...
Oh, I'm not allowed to debate, am I?
Not conjecture, no.
I'm not allowed to debate.
No, it's conjecture.
We're not allowed to
Mr
debate.
Jackson, can you answer that question, please?
Through you, Lord Mayor, I think, agree, there is some confusion. I think that the Deputy Lord Mayor, in articulating the motion to start with, clearly stated that the motion be put in accordance with Regulation 21A. My understanding of that, Lord Mayor, was that the motion that the Deputy Lord Mayor was referring to was the motion for the Council to consider whether it wished to deal with the proposed motion that Alderman Zuko had provided earlier and circulated subsequent to that.
Which is an essential piece of procedural motion we have to make a decision on before we take the next step, because it's not on the agenda, okay?
I am now totally and utterly confused. And I assure you, I've been around here long enough to see this is a very unusual situation, an incredible situation. I think we should take... can I just ask a question? It's been two elected members have asked for adjournment, a slight adjournment to get it clarified. Councillor Dutta and myself both have law degrees. We've both asked you to seek an adjournment for 5 or 10 minutes to get it clarified, because I think this is a very unusual, it's anti-democratic, and it's also making the rules up as you go.
Alderman Briscoe, that is offensive, and
I take it back.
that is offensive to everybody who is providing advice tonight. Now, excuse me, if you could sit down.
I just said I take that back.
If you could sit down. Okay, thank you. All right, so given there is a request for an adjournment, and there seems still to be a lack of clarification, I will adjourn for 2 minutes. If people could stay in the chamber and seek the clarification they need from the officers. But the officer has, before I adjourn, just to clarify, the officer, as my understanding, is that the Deputy Lord Mayor has put a procedural motion that we make a decision on item 8.6, which we have to do because this item is not on the agenda. That is a procedural motion, and that motion be put. That's been moved by the Deputy Lord Mayor, second by Councillor Harvey, I think. But we'll have a 2-minute adjournment so people can seek that clarification from Mr Jackson or the CEO, and then we are coming back to make that threshold decision. We're going to reconvene the meeting and Deputy Lord Mayor is clarifying her motion.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. I did seek advice from Mr Jackson, and so this motion will sound slightly different, but bear with me. So the proposed motion, which has been circulated from Alderman Zuko, be considered by Council in accordance with Regulation 8.6, wasn't it, of the meeting procedures regulations. So, Lord Mayor, Lord Mayor, I've put that in the...
Could you read that again, please?
Yep. So the proposed motion, which has been circulated from Alderman Zuko regarding the taste, be considered by Council in accordance with Regulation 8.6 of the meeting procedure and regulations.
Okay, seconded by... Need a seconder for that.
Which motion are we talking about?
Councillor Sherlock, it's the Deputy's motion on the threshold decision.
Have I moved the motion yet, Lord Mayor? No, I haven't. Okay. I have. Not my motion. Okay.
So, Deputy Lord Mayor, did you want to speak to your motion at all?
We can speak now.
Councillor Sherlock.
This is an open debate now.
Yes, it is. Okay.
So
it might be procedural at some point. I don't know, but this is a motion.
Right.
Well, it's a procedural motion, but in a different. It's a threshold decision we have to make before we move forward. Okay.
Mayor, this obviously needs an absolute majority in relation to this, and I find it actually quite extraordinary that we have something which is not related to anything on the agenda. So that's partly why we need to consider this. We need to have a motion, or we need to have a vote on whether this is really how we should be approaching our business, our council business. And I find it an extraordinary set of circumstances, because usually when there's something that's a foreshadowed motion, it's usually related to something on the agenda, and that's not what we have here. So hence why we should be considering whether we do support hearing this motion at all.
Alderman Briscoe.
Yes, look, I'm glad that wiser heads have prevailed here, and that we actually can debate a motion. And a motion is clearer now. Thank you, Deputy and the legal officer. It seems to me that whilst there hasn't been an agenda item on the taste for this council meeting, it is a very current topic in the community. Even my students have asked me, why have you cancelled the taste? During the weekend, people who I don't know brought it up with me as well about the taste. We're recovering from COVID, why are we closing down the taste? Now, last time we debated the taste, I said it was a sad, and I understood the reasons. I still understand the reasons. But I think what Alderman Zuko's motion will do, if we're ever allowed to debate it, will express to the community that the council is very much behind the taste. We will be delivering it in a different way by a private enterprise or a partnership with the government. And what Alderman Zuko's motion, because we've got a copy of it, has indicated a course of action that puts it on a political level, and that's where decisions are made. The newly elected Premier, going to see the newly elected Premier with the Lord Mayor and a couple of elected members, is one way that Doone Kennedy managed to get $1 million more for the Aquatic Centre and enabled the Aquatic Centre to go ahead, where Sue Hickey, when she was Lord Mayor, enabled various funds, and in fact money for the taste at the time as well, more money. And also when the Lord Mayor Thomas was Lord Mayor, he had he had 2 meetings with the Premier, and I was present with one of them. It is putting it at a high political level. Okay, the officers do the grunt work. There's no doubt about they do the grunt work. They get the figures together. They get proposals together. But politician to politician enables funds or resources to be allocated. For not to be able to debate this tonight, which presumably we won't be able to debate it tonight because there's absence of a number of elected members, I think is not doing good service for the community. it's complementary to the motion that we passed last council meeting. It's complementary. It doesn't go against that. So I think for us in a community which is very interested in what's happening at the end of the year, it may be that it might be an event of 1 day or 2 days, but I think we've got to be in the battle, and high-level battle, not an officer-to-officer discussion. I imagine the new Premier, Gutwin, is very interested in having an event on the waterfront, as we are. But we've got to get to those decision makers. If the debate is reported tonight, that the discussion about that was closed down, I think is a very poor reflection of this council. And that's why we should be allowed to debate. And I'm not saying that the Alderman Zuko's motion will get through, but I think we should be allowed to debate that motion. And that's in fact why there is, if we believe the agenda item 8, where we were talking about having an absolute majority, enables an opportunity for a thing that's in the community or an issue that's in the community to be brought up that doesn't have to wait for 2 weeks for it to be on the agenda of a council meeting by the notice of motion. So I think it's quite proper. And I go against what the Deputy, with respect, that's why we should discuss it, because it is an important item for the community. So I'm hoping that, probably hoping beyond any rational view, that it will enable Alderman Zuko's motion to be debated tonight, rather than wait for another 2 weeks when the time is of the essence.
Alderman Zuko.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, this has got to be the worst debate I've ever been involved in my whole 30 years here. And in particular, in the manner in which this council seeks to shut down a motion under the meeting's procedure. And I'm going to go back to what item 6 is, because what is being proposed here, and it's been stated by the Deputy Lord Mayor needs absolute majority. I'll just read out the section very clearly so the public out there can hear it, because I think the public needs to hear it. This is under the agenda. So we're talking about the agenda that was prepared by the General Manager tonight. A council may, by absolute majority at an ordinary council meeting, or a council committee by simple majority at a council committee meeting, may decide to deal with a matter that is not on the agenda if... See, you know, I was told before I didn't read it. I did read it before, I just didn't want to keep on reading. If the General Manager has reported the reasons it is not possible to include the matter on the agenda, the actual General Manager has reported the reasons why the matter can't be on the agenda. So the General Manager has reported that and said that it wasn't an urgency motion, didn't meet the requirements. And A, the General Manager has reported the reason that it's not possible to include the matter on the agenda. The General Manager has done so. So Section 6 is not relevant, because the General Manager's done all that. That's why we are now in what is called meeting procedures. It's not about the agenda anymore, it's about the procedures of committee. We are now, and have been since about 5 o'clock, been in the committee meeting. And it says very clearly in Section 16, motions. Section 16, if during. I am during the meeting, a councillor intends to move a motion of which notice has not been given, the chairperson of the meeting may require the council to provide written notice of that motion. Lord Mayor, my motion here is motion that the council seek an urgent meeting, and I can continually read on about what my motion is. Then it goes on to, Lord Mayor, say that the chairperson of the meeting is not to allow the motion to be debated, which you can't allow it to be debated, until otherwise it's been dealt with, unless it is moved by one councillor and seconded by another councillor, which we have not had the opportunity to put. And thirdly, you can actually accept it without someone moving it. Lord Mayor, what we are doing here tonight is trying to play the agenda to the meeting procedures, but it says very clearly, if during the meeting. This is not pre the agenda, this is during the meeting. Now, I am not being disrespectful for any legal advice we may have got or haven't got. I know the advice I have got, okay? That as long as I put this motion during the meeting, it meets the requirements of the section 16 of motions. And all I am trying to do tonight, and all I've been trying to do tonight, and the Deputy even says that it's not relevant to any matter on the agenda. Yes, it is. Dark Mofo is an event. Components of my motion are not relevant just to the taste, it also talks about similar events. I can recall many times I've done this over my time where we've had matters on the agenda, and you can actually move amendments or foreshadowed motions. I specifically moved a 16A in respect of a motion during a meeting. And I will say to each and every elected member to read what was proposed, and what we are trying to do is use the procedural motion process without a motion on the agenda, because I haven't even moved it. I'll leave it up to the council to decide what you want to do and what you don't want to do. But I will say to the council that no matter what happens tonight, it won't be the last time that you'll hear me on this particular matter.
Further discussion? Further discussion. Councillor Coates.
Yeah, look, I think it's very clear. We've been given a lot of advice here from council staff, and that's lovely. I'm not going to necessarily try and, I'm not a trained lawyer, but from a layman's reading, it's clearly, the rules are written to such an extent that it enables you to bring forward a motion without notice. There's clearly avenues and ways of doing so. I mean, I know I moved earlier, or posited the idea that we transfer that agenda item to the end, so we could have time to get all this information together, and that didn't fly. But look, I mean, to me, the elephant in the room here is why wouldn't 7 days' notice have been given? Well, it's talking about the minister event. The ministry wasn't even announced 7 days ago. You know, there was a motion that we voted on tonight in regards to Dark Mofo and events funding, and what's proposed to be debated talks about events. I would love to hear the reasonings from my fellow elected member. I'd love to be able to fully understand this issue and represent my community and have a vote on it. But I find that instead we're not. We're arguing whether or not we should have that debate. In my mind, there should be very, 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 very strong reasons why we should ever seek not to have a debate. Clearly it's topical. Clearly there's an elephant in the room as to why it's come up so quickly. I don't know. The member may say it's community pressure since we made the previous decision. It may be that it's because it's a new ministry. It may be because the Dark Mofo motion was before us tonight, and as a similar event there needs to be some discussion raised around it. But I haven't heard that because we don't have the opportunity.
Point of order.
This has been going on for about 45 minutes or so. Can I just request that the motion be put?
Will you have to move that as a procedural motion, Councillor Ewan? That if that's a procedural motion, someone would have to second you. That the deputy's motion be put. I think Councillor Sherlock might have. Did you move the original motion? So, Councillor Ewan, if you don't have a seconder for your procedural motion, then that will lapse. Okay. Continue, please.
Let's keep talking about it for ages. This is fun.
This is democracy.
Okay. Councillor Coates.
Thank you. Look, I guess I just wanted to make the linkages here are that clearly there are avenues available to have this style of motion brought forward, you know, without the 7 days that normally would go through. I think on the face of it, there's valid reasons that I can easily think of as to why that's happened in this case, and I look forward to actually hearing from the proposer of this proposed, the mover of this proposed, or the person who proposes to move this proposed amendment, motion, sorry, as to what those reasons are. Because ultimately I think we're here to represent the community, and for all I know, there's been strong community interest in this, and I've talked to the Alderman, and he's going to let us know all about that, and I look forward to it. But I would hate to be voting something down and not even having a debate. I just think that's wrong.
The discussion on Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think this could have been avoided had proper procedures been followed at the start and 7 days' notice, given to the council to have something on the agenda, and then we wouldn't have spent the last 2 hours or so, or whatever the time period is. Also, very warm welcome to the CEO. So hopefully you don't get a lot of these sorts of debates into the future.
Every fortnight.
Yeah. But a fortnight ago, we had a really strong motion to the council that was agreed, 11 votes to 1. And I was very confident in that motion. And part 5 of that motion, which I now see is already on the... I'm not sure if it was a confidential memo this afternoon or not, but already it's been talked about on the Mercury website. So I assume that it's all out in the open. So part 5 of that, the new state government, which we now have, be requested to honour the commitment of the previous government to support the consideration of further options around the Taste of Tasmania event. So we're already in the process of discussing what's going on, or the future of the Taste, with the state government. And they're, I'm sure, as keen as us to make sure that the Taste is a viable event into the future, and hopefully something will happen at the end of this year that we can all be, part of and proud of, to be able to deliver an event under the circumstances, with the assistance of the state government, and however it lands. But I don't want to preempt what that might be. I'm not going to direct what that might be. I haven't gone to the media and talked about what I want to see at the end of the year, because I trust the process, I trust the officers to get on with the job as we tasked them with the motion on the 10th of May. So 11 of us around the room supported that motion, and one alderman didn't support the motion, and now we have a different set of circumstances that we're debating whether to debate something. So, and in the past we used to have the urgency thing, where a motion could come to council and we'd debate the urgency of it, but apparently that we shouldn't have done that. So that's now not a thing anymore. But look, I'm not going to support the need to debate this motion. I think the officer's recommendation that 11 out of 12 of us agreed to a fortnight ago is strong, and that's what we should be working with. Let the process roll on, and let's see how we go towards the end of the year with some other alternative Taste event, which I think is probably highly likely to be on the cards. But let's let the process roll on, and let's not interfere with that process by coming up with our own alternatives. Imagine if we all decided what we want to have at the end of the year. And I think the irony of all this is we always get accused of politicising the Taste. And I can't think of anyone in the room other than one person who has been talking about the Taste in such a way that it could be perceived to be politicising the Taste. So I think we should just all calm down and let the process run and see what we get in the next few months as our officers speak with the state government and move towards a solution for the end of the year and for the ongoing survival and future. And I do think the Taste will go into the future once we get through this process and this part now for the rest of the year. So I think we don't need to debate the motion that's that will be proposed. So I'll be voting against it.
I have a question, Lord Mayor.
Yeah, question, Alderman Zuko.
Yes, Lord Mayor. The first question is, Councillor Harvey was referring to the memo. This memo was on the closed. Is this now memo open? That's the first question. My second question is, in in respect of what the council decision was on point 1. Could the appropriate officer read it out and let me know what it actually means, please?
Okay, so who would like to respond to that question? Mr. Short? Around the... I think there's the question...
Please have some clarity on the question.
Okay, I'll ask my second question first. Could the relevant officer, through the General Manager, please confirm the point 1 of the council decision and read it out for us, please?
Lord Mayor, is that point 1 of the council decision from 2 weeks ago?
That is correct. That's as part of the memo that was part of the confidential memo that went out, but it's part of the original motion.
So the motion, Mr. Short, is that number 1, the council resolved that it no longer needs to own nor deliver the Taste of Tasmania. So,
okay, my second question is, does the word "nor deliver" mean that we don't want to do it anymore? Is that correct or incorrect?
Well, I think it's reasonably clear. It says "nor deliver."
Thank you. Thank you.
okay, so is there further discussion on the motion by
You're trying to...
Deputy Lord Mayor?
Wasting
Alderman
time.
Barakis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, Lord Mayor, the reason the Section 8 in the Act allows us to even be discussing this, and Section 16 allows us to be discussing motions that aren't already on the agenda or for which notice hasn't been given, is to allow council to deal with emergent issues and issues that are arising and issues with which there is a high level of time sensitivity and a high community interest or high importance to the community. Given the reaction from the public when we made our decision on this in our last council meeting, there's definitely a huge amount of community concern on the issue of the taste. There's the view by some that perhaps the decision was made hastily, and that there needs to be a stopgap to ensure that the taste is delivered into the short term whilst the long-term future of the program is being deliberated and being formulated. Given the time sensitivity of it, because as was said, we weren't able to move such a motion when we didn't even know who the government was going to be or who the relevant minister was going to be. And given the significant level of community interest on this, I think it is absolutely relevant and important that we discuss this sooner rather than later. And I think that is the exact reason why these provisions in the Act exist, is to allow us the flexibility to debate issues and debate items as they arise, if they arise within that 7-day window. So Lord Mayor, I'd be encouraging everybody to allow the debate, whether they support the motion or don't support the motion. I think the message that we're sending to the public that has a pretty significant level of interest in this, that we don't even want to, whilst we are here sitting as a council, that we don't even want to debate an item which has a pretty significant community interest and a time clock attached to it as well. That would send a pretty significant message to the community that we don't want to sit here and do our jobs and actually discuss the item. There are reasons why the items come up late or within that 7-day notice of motion period, and it's ultimately up to us to accept that or not accept that. But I think if we were not to accept that, it would send a pretty poor message to the public that has a pretty high level of interest and who overwhelmingly think this of an issue of great importance. So I think we should be respecting that.
Further discussion, Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I am having a lot of difficulty with this, but I am just going to take a position on this the way I understand it, having heard the views and points made by different people. I look at Section 8 and I interpret it. It is my understanding that the motion was given and it did not qualify. It didn't have the 7 days, and therefore the reasons have been given to us. So I accept that. The Alderman then, under Section 16, had brought it to us in this council for us to debate this. Now, I somehow or the other I'm not able to see how we can now somehow or the other join 8 and 16 together. I see 16 independently. And therefore, in the context of the sub-clauses therein, my interpretation is that I would allow this to happen, allow the debate. And I don't want to take the right away from any alderman, any councillor. The motion to debate is there. Does he have the right to bring it under Section 16? It appears to me, in my interpretation, that he or she has the right to bring it out and for us to debate it. And therefore, I would allow the debate to go on. When it is voted on whichever way is a different matter. But not to allow it, for me, it will be unconscionable for me.
Further discussion? No further discussion? Okay. Look, I've listened to a lot of the discussion. I just need to put it into a little bit of context, I think, because people have been quoting a little bit selectively from 8.6, which is that that the council may decide whether to deal with a matter that's not on the agenda. One, if the General Manager has reported that it wasn't possible, which is the 7 days, but B, that the General Manager has reported that this matter is urgent. We haven't received that advice from the General Manager that this matter is urgent. What we actually have is we actually made a decision about the taste. We made a very clear decision. We made a decision that was voted by 11 members of this council and 1 against. The decision was clear that we needed to make the threshold decision that we no longer need to be the owners and deliverers of the taste, that we are open to other partners. And since then, a number of people who are interested in running this event have stepped forward. And that's okay, that's fine that that's happening. There's nothing in this motion that needs to happen that's not already happening. It is redundant. Not this motion, but the one that we're proposing to put on the agenda, because the discussions with the state government are already happening. They were going well because this wasn't being politicised, because we were discussing the practical ways of actually working with other partners to bring forward an event. It provided sufficient clarity for the staff, sufficient clarity for the state government, sufficient clarity for the stall holders. There's no need for this additional
Point of order,
motion.
Lord Mayor. Point of order, Lord Mayor.
Yes.
My point of order is you're actually debating the motion that I haven't put, rather than the motion in regards to not being put.
No, I'm sorry, Alderman Zuko, but a number of people have been talking about the taste and whether we should be actually talking about... What I'm saying is that the motion that you are wanting to urgently put before us on the agenda is not urgent, and it is redundant because everything that's in it is already happening. The reason
we're meeting with the Premier.
The reason for the motion is because one member of our council is not comfortable and wants to talk about this some more, but we've already provided the clarity, we've provided the certainty to our staff. This actually just drags the whole thing back into a whole heap of uncertainty. You know, we've got to stick with the decisions we make. We've got to be clear. We've got to take leadership positions, and everything that is in this decision we made 2 weeks ago is clear that we are no longer going to be delivering the taste, but that we will be working with other partners. We will be working with the state government. We are interested in being a partner in the future. And that's what everybody is working towards. So I really, I just think this is all rather self-indulgent.
That is absolutely over the top. I represent the community. Self-indulgent is absolutely not.
Okay, Alderman.
And I'd like you to take that back.
No, Alderman Zuko, that's my opinion, and I didn't.
Lord Mayor, I am doing this because I've been contacted by a vast number of people in the community. I think that's over the top.
I think that's criticising a fellow elected member as well.
It is criticising Alderman Zuko, yes it is, and I'm very clear about that because I think this is a self-indulgent motion that is not needed because we have made our decision.
You're pushing the barrow, that's what you're doing. You're pushing your own barrow. You don't even know what teamwork is.
Excuse me, Alderman Zuko, you are interjecting and not allowing me to speak.
You are making derogatory comments.
Well, excuse me, Alderman Zuko, but my opinion is that your motion is redundant. And it is not required, and it takes away from the very clear decision that the council made 2 weeks ago, and we are getting on with it. And quite frankly, all of this kind of grandstanding and seeking sort of headlines is just actually undermining the work that we've been trying to do since we made the decision 2 weeks ago. So I would rather we just keep going with the decision that 11 members voted for. All of the things you're suggesting about meetings with the Premier and the state government, discussions about whether we would bring back, whether we might provide in-kind assistance, that will come back to us. We're not at that stage yet, Alderman Zuko. We have to actually, the state government has to run a process, whether they can provide some support for someone, an event operator. It will then come back to us. So nothing in this motion is urgent. Nothing in this motion provides any stronger clarity than the decision that was made by this council, 11 votes to 1 2 weeks ago.
Your opinion.
Lord Mayor, for you to, an opportunity for you to correct, you said nothing in this motion hasn't been decided already. Yet the first part of the motion is that the council seek an urgent meeting with the Premier and Events Minister. So has that been done?
Look, that hasn't been done, but there have been discussions with the Premier and his office and his delegates.
So, but you said everything in this motion had already been done, and it hasn't been done. So it's the level of clarity. Now it's effectively been done.
All right. Would anyone like to have a further discussion? Deputy Lord Mayor, would you like to summarise your motion at all?
No, I don't think so. I think enough has been said, Lord Mayor.
So is everyone clear that the motion is, if Mr Jackson could read it out again for us, please.
Through you, Lord Mayor, the proposed motion circulated by Alderman Zuko regarding the Taste of Tasmania be considered by the Council in accordance with Regulation 8.6 of the Meeting Procedure Regs. Okay, so you either vote for that, for us to have a debate about Alderman Zuko's motion, or you vote against it. Okay, so I'm going to put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no.
Aye.
Show of hands. All those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Briscoe.
So effectively 3 people.
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Ewan,
4 people.
Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Closing the debate, 4 to 6. Democracy.
Okay, we don't need the snide responses. Just the.
What was the vote?
Factual.
So what's the result?
Through you, Lord Mayor, the motion was voted on 6-4, which is lost because the motion required an absolute majority, which is 7. Okay. Moving on to, we'll now get a motion to move to the...
Move that we go to the closed
portion of the meeting, seconded by Alderman Barakis. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously.